Roger Cooper had spent years circling families like ours waiting for the right moment to strike. And if Dad hadn't stopped him when he did, we might have ended up just like the family in that newspaper clipping. Broken, bankrupt, destroyed. Kevin finally leaned back in his chair. "I keep thinking about how close I came to handing everything to him," he said quietly. "You didn't know," I said. "That's exactly how people like Cooper operate." Kevin nodded, but the guilt still lingered in his eyes. "Dad knew," he said after a moment. "He saw it coming." "Yes," I replied, "and he spent his last years protecting us from it." 6 months later, the federal courthouse in Albany was crowded the day Roger Cooper was sentenced. Detective Santos had called earlier that week to tell me the trial had moved quickly. The evidence against him had been overwhelming. 7 families had come forward to testify. Each story sounded disturbingly familiar: an aging parent, a valuable family business, a helpful consultant who promised growth and efficiency, and within a year or two everything was gone. When the jury returned with a verdict of guilty on all counts, the courtroom fell silent. Fraud, extortion, money laundering, conspiracy. The judge looked down at Cooper with visible disgust. "Mr. Cooper," he said, "you built a career preying on families during their most vulnerable moments. Your crimes were not just financial. They were personal and devastating." He paused before delivering the sentence. "I am sentencing you to 27 years in federal prison." For the first time since I had met him, Roger Cooper looked truly defeated. As the marshals led him away in handcuffs, he glanced back toward the courtroom. But this time, there was no charm left, only anger, and the quiet understanding that his game was finally over. 1 year later, life in Kingston had slowly settled into something that felt almost normal again. Kevin never went back to Manhattan. Instead, he moved into the farmhouse with his wife and their 2 young kids. The house was loud again, the way it used to be when we were growing up. Kevin threw himself into the construction business with an intensity I had never seen before. But this time, it wasn't about expansion or profit margins. It was about doing the job right. One afternoon, I stopped by the office to drop off paperwork. One of Dad's longtime employees, Mike Donnelly, caught me near the door. "You know," he said, nodding toward Kevin's office, "your brother reminds me more of your father every day." I looked through the glass window. Kevin was leaning over a set of blueprints with 2 younger workers, explaining something patiently, not rushing, not barking orders, teaching. I smiled. "Yeah," I said, "I think Dad would be proud of him. You might be wondering what was my decision on the mining rights? Well, 60 days after the Hillside Crest meeting, I finally signed the agreement, but not the one they had originally offered. Instead, I chose the hybrid structure. $40 million up front, plus long-term royalty payments on the minerals extracted from the land. It wasn't the fastest money, and it definitely wasn't the easiest arrangement to manage, but it followed the same philosophy Dad had believed in his entire life. Think long-term. Protect the future. T trade tomorrow's security for today's excitement. Most of the upfront money went into a family trust managed by independent advisors. College funds for Kevin's children. Emergency reserves. Conservative investments. Nothing flashy, nothing risky, just the kind of careful planning Dad had spent his life teaching us. One evening, I found myself sitting in Dad's study again. The mining equipment wouldn't arrive for another year. The royalties might take decades to reach their full value, but the land outside the window looked exactly the same as it always had. Quiet, steady, enduring. Kevin stepped into the doorway. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded. "I was just thinking about Dad." Kevin walked over and looked out the window beside me. "You know," he said, "for years I thought his biggest gift to us would be the business." I smiled slightly. "I used to think that too. But it wasn't the business," Kevin continued, "and it wasn't the land." I held up the letter Dad had written during his final months. "No," I said softly, "it was this. The lessons, the patience, the ability to see 10 steps ahead." Kevin folded his arms as we both stared out at the fields stretching toward the hills. For the first time since Dad died, the future didn't feel uncertain. It felt secure, not because of the money, but because we finally understood the plan he had left behind. Dad hadn't just given us an inheritance. He had given us something much more valuable. He had given us the wisdom to protect it. And this time, we were finally ready to do exactly that. Thank you so much for listening to this story. Please comment below and tell me where you're from. Would you reach the same decision as Rachel regarding the mining rights? Feel free to share your thoughts. If you enjoyed this story and want more like it, please make sure to subscribe to the My Revenge Space channel and like this video. See you later.